With the New York Rangers not performing up to expectations this season, earlier on, Chris Drury, the general manager, decided to make quite a few different trades by moving out guys like Jacob Trouba, the captain, Capo Kakko, Philip Hedl, and also Ryan Lindgren, as well as some other kind of smaller pieces as well. They all got traded away to try and take this team in a different direction going forward and kind of maybe change up the core group of players going forward into the future. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at some of the New York Rangers players that I think it would make sense for this upcoming offseason for the New York Rangers to potentially shop and actually try and really trade away, as well as a couple of the guys who I think they could possibly make a bit of sense for this team to deal away in a package for a potential star/superstar caliber player where this team would be seeing a real impactful player come back in return. So let's get right into it here and take a look at, first off, the guys who I think in general just should be really shopped this upcoming offseason. And I'm not going to talk about a guy like Mika Zibanejad, who I think it would make sense for this Rangers team to trade away, but I just don't quite see a trade actually happening as much as some Rangers fans probably do want to see him traded away. And I get that he has definitely not performed out of that contract, but with it being such kind of a bad deal going forward, and yes, he has shown a lot more flashes at playing wing now with this team and has definitely looked better. I'm just not quite sure a deal like that is 100% realistic and is actually going to happen. So we're not going to talk about guys like that in today's video. These are going to be players who I really do think it makes sense for this team to look at trading away, and also a couple of guys who I think if the right deal came across the table where you're getting back a real impactful player like a star or a superstar, it would make sense to trade them away in a package for that player. And the first guy we have here is Chris Kreider. Now, he's a guy who's obviously the longest tenured New York Ranger. He's been on this team for his entire NHL career ever since being drafted in the first round. Quite a few years ago now. He's obviously been on this team since, and I wouldn't love to see him traded away, but at this point, with the way he's been playing and him having a $6.5 million cap hit, I think if you can trade him away and get back something decent, that would not be the worst idea in the world. And I'd imagine he definitely still has, a decent bit of value. This season, he's obviously got 18 goals there, 4 assists. It's not like he's in his prime by any means right now, but for his $6.5 million cap hit, a kind of team who's maybe trying to get a rebuild there, like maybe San Jose or possibly Anaheim, would one of those kind of teams look to pick up a guy like Kreider? Now, he does have a 15-team no-trade list, so that makes things a little more difficult to trade him away, especially if he is going to block out some of those teams with a lot of cap space who very well could end up being interested in a guy like Kreider. For example, teams like Utah, like I said, San Jose, Anaheim, these teams who are kind of getting out of rebuild, or at least trying to. Maybe they want to add in a, solid veteran guy who can maybe still score them, around 30 goals, be a solid vet, at moments can definitely be a solid 2A guy, can PK a bit maybe for one of those teams possibly. So I'm not saying he's, one of the top premier kind of guys on the market, but I just think he could be a decent pickup for one of these teams who are trying to get out of rebuild there. You wouldn't have to give up a ton to get him, and could just be a solid veteran guy to have in the locker room as well. And with a cap hit of $6.5 million, with how much the cap is going up, that's not too bad for a guy who can still possibly score you around 30 goals potentially. So I think adding a guy like Kreider for one of those teams could make sense. And with the Rangers having so many great wing prospects, you've got guys like Brendan Othman and Brett Berard who we're already seeing at the NHL level, but you've also got guys like Gabe Perreault and Adam Sikora who could start to be kind of competing for spots next season, especially a guy like Gabe Perreault. And there are a bunch of other great forward prospects as well who are going to really start to be pushing towards an NHL potential job at some point in the near future. So dealing away a guy like Kreider to not only open up spots for those guys, but also you're saving $6.5 million in cap space. That could be a pretty solid defenseman you're adding in there potentially to really kind of strengthen up this team, or maybe that it allows you to go out there and trade for one of those D-men, or, trade for another top 6 forward because you have that extra $6.5 million on top of what this team already has. So I'm hopeful that we can see a deal happen here. Obviously, like I said, I like Kreider. I think he's a good player, solid player, but right now he's not playing the best hockey of his career, that's for sure. And on this team, with this team and kind of the direction they're going in, I think dealing away a guy like Kreider and just, getting a different face in here might not be the worst idea for this team. So in my opinion, if you can trade him away, get back something and just kind of open up that space there, it would not be a bad idea. Although, I am a fan of Kreider for sure. I've watched him for so many years, obviously, as a diehard Rangers fan, but Kreider, it just might be his time to go out the door this upcoming offseason. And next up here, we have K'Andre Miller. And this is a player who I really kind of wonder how much value he still has around the league. And if it's not much, I would rather just keep him at this point. But if you can get a decent return for him, I would not be against seeing K'Andre Miller get traded away. Maybe it isn't a package for a superstar store caliber player where you're giving up K'Andre plus a couple other assets, maybe whether it's some higher end stuff, lower end stuff, whatever it is, and going after a star slash superstar caliber guy. That's definitely a possibility, but I just think it might be time to see him possibly traded away. He's obviously got that size there at 6'5", 210 pounds. He's that big left-handed shot defenseman, plays, hypothetically a solid two-way game, but the problem is it's the inconsistencies that he shows. And at moments, man, he looks so good defensively or he looks so good offensively, but there's just way, way too many other moments. And these are kind of what we see for the most part there where he's just not playing great and he's maybe being a liability defensively, or he's just not being physical enough when he is not 6'5" guy, not strong enough in the puck, or he's getting pushed off too easy, or he's losing those puck battles in the corners. He's just one of those guys who has the kind of intangibles, that 6'5" size, or that skating ability, and he flashes those moments. He has that skill, but he does show a lot of moments and kind of flashes of just being a kind of liability at moments defensively. So it's kind of tough with K'Andre because he does show that talent, but obviously has way too many moments when he is being a liability or isn't making the right plays. So it's a tough one with him, but I do think if the right deal does come across the table, you have to make it happen. But obviously, if you're selling this guy for like a third and a prospect, I would be really upset with that. So the only way I would want to see him traded away is if getting something actually back pretty decent, which, I have no idea what his value is. And I'm sure it's more than a third and like a mid prospect or something like that. But I just am hopeful that this team, if they do trade him away, they are able to get something back pretty decent in return. Because I think at moments in the past, they probably could have traded him away, at least in a package for, a star caliber guy possibly. Obviously, now his value has gone down since then, so it may be too late to sell. We'll have to wait and see. But like I said, if K'Andre is in a deal this offseason, I am definitely okay with that. It just needs to be for the right return. And now we've got Zach Jones, who I definitely think should be shopped this upcoming offseason, but how much value does he really have? I'm not quite sure because he was given the opportunity to seek out a trade earlier on this season after the Rangers couldn't find one for him. So it's not looking like he has a ton of value. We'll have to wait and see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets dealt for something pretty minimal this upcoming offseason. It's not going to be a lot. And he is an RFA. He's starting to get towards his mid-20s there, so I'm not quite sure how much more room there is really to grow and to see him get a whole lot better, but he still can be a serviceable defenseman at the NHL level. Not quite sure he's going to be, a top 6 guy on a truly elite kind of Stanley Cup contending team, but I do think he can have still a maybe solid NHL career. I just don't think it's going to be with the New York Rangers. And I'm going to be honest, that pretty much does it for the guys on this roster that I honestly think it makes sense for the New York Rangers to shop and really look to trade, while also it making sense for another team to actually kind of potentially want them. I understand, the Rangers fans, and I definitely kind of want to as well, see a guy like maybe Mika Zibanejad traded away, for example, right? But if we're being honest here, I just don't know how realistic it is to actually see that contract of Mika Zibanejad actually get dealt away. I think he has been an improved player for sure since going to the wing, but I'm not quite sure he's going to actually get traded away. I don't think other teams are really kind of, chomping at the bit there to really kind of make a deal happen. So in my opinion, a guy like that's probably going to get dealt away. There's been a little bit of talk amongst fans about dealing away a guy like Panarin. Again, I just don't think from a Rangers side that's going to happen there. Whether teams out there might be interested, I'm sure there could be. I'd imagine there definitely are. But obviously the Rangers are probably not going to look to trade away a guy like Panarin, although he's going to be entering the last year of his contract. I just don't think he's going to get dealt. And then obviously there's some other guys as well, like a Sam Carrick, for example, who, could get traded away, yes, I guess. But as a Rangers fan, I don't think it'd make any sense for this team to trade him away. We obviously kind of desperately need center depth, so trading him away would make absolutely no sense. And then you got some younger guys as well, like an Adam Edstrom, Will Cooley, Matt Rempe, Juuso Parssinen, those kind of guys there who I don't really think it makes sense to move them away. And especially a guy like you, so you're not going to get a ton back. So I don't think you're going to really be dealing any of these guys away. But some other kind of guys who are still young on this team, though, that I think it could make sense. And obviously, any single player in this organization could be traded in, the right deal, obviously, right? If the Oilers are offering up Connor McDavid for Adam Fox, you're saying yes to that in a heartbeat. But two players who I think the Rangers could possibly look at shopping around to see if they could possibly use that player in a package to kind of add in a real kind of superstar caliber guy are two players like Alexis Lafreniere and Braden Schneider. Now, I'm not saying I want to see this happen, and I really don't for either of these guys unless it was for, the right deal. And like I said, any single player I would be okay with the trade away in the right package. But these are two guys who I think the Rangers could possibly look to shop if they really want to make a major splash trade happen this upcoming offseason. As you're adding in a guy like a Braden Schneider or a guy like Alexis Lafreniere into a package alongside some other good pieces, you could add in a really key player coming back in return, I think. So if the Rangers saw that truly kind of superstar kind of guy possibly become available, I think there is the possibility we could see one of those guys go out the door. Like I said, I don't think I want to see it happen unless it is for a real impactful guy coming back and, someone who's preferably quite young as well. But I'm just saying, it is a possibility that if Chris Drury feels a little desperation potentially to kind of make something major happen, he very well could look to include a guy like Braden or Alexi to make that deal happen. And like I said, I don't really want to see either of these guys get traded away, but I just think if that superstar does become available and Chris Drury really wants to pull the trigger on it to make this team more of a kind of win-now squad, which I wouldn't be surprised if he does. And I'm not saying that's the best move, but one of those kind of moves where he's starting to really push more chips in towards helping this team win now, it wouldn't shock me if he kind of did that. So in my opinion, like I said, I don't want to see them traded away, but if that right deal did come across his table, I would not be against it either. I just think, obviously you're risking quite a bit there with dealing away a guy like Braden or Alexi, who could very well end up breaking out in a big way if they left this team. We've seen with other guys as well. And if it happened with them, I would be very, very disappointed. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content every single day at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, as well as definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. Who do you want to see traded away from the New York Rangers this upcoming offseason? And also, would you be willing to include a guy like Alexis Lafreniere or Braden Schneider in a trade package for a potential superstar caliber guy coming back in return? Let me know your thoughts. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.